Continuing from the previous episode, after escaping from captivity, the panda lands on the ground. Meanwhile, the divine being, despite having a hole punched through his body by Pa earlier, has now completely regenerated. Pa, panting heavily after landing, no longer has his carefree expression. Instead, he looks exhausted, his face stained with blood. But the god gives him no time to rest and immediately launches an attack. In the blink of an eye, the deity's long, jagged limbs shoot forward. Like giant needles through the air, in a flash, they appear before Pa, stabbing into the ground like a frenzy of sewing machines, tearing up the very earth where Pa had just stood. Rocks and soil erupt, and thick dust clouds rise into the air. Amid the chaos, a vengeful, shrieking voice echoes relentlessly. "Kill you! Kill you! Kill you! Kill you!" From afar, a superhuman being witnessing the scene turns pale and exclaims, "It's over! That panda is dead! We better run too!" After a brutal onslaught, Pa is completely entangled by the god's tentacles, unable to move. Then, the deity tilts his head back slightly, and above Po's head, 3 orbs of spiritual energy form and spin violently, shining like miniature suns. With a cold sneer, the deity declares, "This is my ultimate technique, be annihilated." Pa, now tightly bound, cannot dodge. All he can do is grit his teeth and brace himself for the incoming attack. In a split second, the 3 deadly orbs rush toward him from 3 directions, forming a triangular encirclement. A screeching sound pierces the air as the 3 massive energy forces collide, a nightmarish noise that feels like it could crush everything. In the blinding white light, Po's figure disappears. The orbs continue to spin and eventually begin merging into a single massive force, with Pa trapped at the very center. Seeing this, the divine being throws his head back and laughs. Arrogantly, his laughter echoes through the sky. Ha 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 ha! At the center of the blast, a massive explosion erupts, sending shockwaves in every direction. The entire land is engulfed in light and destructive power. But then, amidst the carnage, a chilling and contemptuous voice cuts through the air. "What are you laughing at?" The deity's laughter abruptly stops, his smugness vanishes, replaced by a look of sheer horror. His eyes widen in disbelief, his mouth agape, unable to speak. Far off in the distance, Mu Tian and his superhuman companion are caught in the shockwave and tossed through the air like leaves in a storm. Back to Pa, he now hovers midair, his body engulfed in blazing red flames and swirling dust, forming a fierce aura. His eyes are calm, and his voice echoes with pride. "That pathetic attack of yours did nothing to me." With those words, Po's right arm begins to gather energy. His paw clenches tightly, and half of his arm transforms into a blazing fire fist. His voice is firm and resolute, as if giving a lesson. "This is what a real attack looks like." Across from him, the flames from Po's punch reflect in the panicked eyes of the deity. Boom! Pa hurls his fiery fist like a blazing divine strike, slamming it straight into the god's abdomen. The thunderous impact sends the colossal deity crashing into the ground, shattering rocks and sending dust high into the air. Blood bursts from the god's mouth. A chaotic and incredulous thought runs through his mind. "Impossible, I'm the second strongest god. I even absorbed the powers of the fallen ones. My power should be unmatched. How is this ugly creature so strong?" On the god's abdomen, Pa, after landing his punch, transforms his paw into stone and delivers another crushing blow. The deity can't take it anymore. He coughs up more blood. Pa pauses for a moment, then delivers a judgment. "To win, you killed your own wife, you betrayed love, you're not worthy of pure love. I must destroy scum like you." As he finishes, a blood-red gleam flashes in Po's eyes. His entire body radiates an overwhelming killing intent, his fury piercing the sky. The god opposite him shudders, his eyes narrowing in fear, for the first time since the battle began. But suddenly, his massive limbs retract and converge, attempting to trap Pa inside. He let out a furious roar, spitting out a mouthful of bright red blood. "Even if I die, I'm taking you with me." Watching from a distance, Mu Tian shuddered at the chilling declaration, a look of horror spreading across his face as he thought, what is he planning now? But in just a flash, when the true intent of the god became clear, both Mu Tian and his superhuman companion exclaimed in unison, "Not good, He's going to self-destruct. The god glared at Pa, who was still standing atop his body, his eyes blazing with madness. Even if you beg me, I won't spare you. Ha 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 ha. Pa, sensing the god was preparing a desperate move, narrowed his eyes, a cold gleam flashing through them as he shifted into a battle-ready stance. The god noticed that look and shouted angrily, "What's with that look in your eyes?" Pa replied in a mocking, disdainful tone, "You call it victory when you have to blow yourself up to win? A god that can only rely on this? How pathetic!" The god screamed in rage. "So what? I don't need a lesson from you. A god must win. For a filthy creature like you to push me this far, that's already the greatest honor of your miserable existence. Take that honor and stay on this planet, forever." With that, countless beams of light shot out from the god's body, each one brimming with overwhelming spiritual power. At this point, Pa was already trapped inside the god's body, caught within the center of his imploding core. The lights, pure spiritual energy, exploded outward, surging toward Mu Tian and his superhuman friend. Realizing the looming danger, both cried out once again, "This is bad." Boom! A deafening explosion tore through the battlefield. The entire area where Pa had been fighting was consumed in an apocalyptic blast. Even from tens of kilometers away, the light was visible, and the shockwaves could be felt. Everything in the blast's path, massive ruins and rubble alike, was pulverized into dust in an instant. The destructive force expanded outward, and as it approached, Mu Tian had to extend his dragon wings to shield himself and his companion, encasing them in a protective barrier. The explosion's wind swept Mu Tian's hair back, tension written all over his face. He gritted his teeth, worry clearly visible in his eyes as he looked toward the center of the blast, where Pa had been trapped, using the god's self-destruction point as its epicenter. A massive section of the city had been obliterated. Everything in the blast's radius was reduced to ashes. No trace of life or structure remained, only a desolate, devastated wasteland. Above, thick black clouds formed from the explosion, darkening the sky. Mu Tian and his superhuman friend, though battered by the residual shockwave, landed safely on the ground. Their gazes immediately turned toward the epicenter. Slowly, the dense smoke and dust began to clear, revealing a fallen figure. The god's body, now lifeless, slumped amid the ruins. Suddenly, Mu Tian's eyes widened in surprise. He stared forward intently. Thud! Heavy footsteps echoed through the silence, each one hitting the ground like a distant drum. A sharp glint of light pierced the dusty haze, emerging from the smoke. Was Pa. He carried the massive severed head of the god slung over his shoulder, walking slowly but steadily toward Mu Tian and his companion. Seeing that his comrade had survived, Mu Tian couldn't hide his joy. A gleam of relief shone in his eyes. "You did it. You won." But the ground they stood on had transformed into a colossal crater, carved out by the god's cataclysmic self-destruction. Meanwhile, in another corner of the battlefield, atop a towering pitch-black spire where space itself seemed twisted by wild spiritual energy, another god stood with arrogant confidence, his presence overwhelming. He laughed coldly. "So, you can't hold out any longer, can you?" Across from him, Qing Chang and Lin Feng stood battered and bloodied, their clothes in tatters, bodies covered in wounds. Their breathing was ragged and strained. Clearly they had poured all their strength into the battle but still couldn't overpower their opponent. Seeing their state, the god only grew more smug. He raised a hand, summoning two roaring streams of spiritual energy. His eyes turned cold, like a judge pronouncing a death sentence. "Let me send you off on your final journey." In the blink of an eye, both attacks surged toward Qing Chang and Lin Feng. Exhausted from repeated clashes, the two had no strength left to dodge. The twin blasts struck with devastating force, piercing their bodies instantly and hurling them backward, blood spraying through the air.